Welcome to Prose Cons, a podcast by writers for writers, brought to you by Precipice Fiction. Precipice Fiction would like to acknowledge the people of the Eora and Durrag nations as the original custodians and storytellers of the land that this podcast was created on.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Pros and Cons, podcast by writers for writers. Because sometimes we feel like pros, getting everything right, checking all the boxes, and sometimes we feel like cons, just sitting, reading our own work, wondering if it's anything or if it's just words on a page. But anyway, I'm here with James today, and we're gonna have a bit of a little intimate one-on-one. Yeah, James, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, how's it going? I'm James Healy. I'm a writer of horror science fiction. And I'm known for Cooling Engines, which is my short story that I put into our anthology, the new Mythic. And yeah, that's me. I do a bit of freelance editing. And yeah, today we're going to be talking, just talk about what we've been reading lately and what we kind of thought we liked and what was working and what we thought wasn't working. So it should be fun.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, I'm Phoenix Rigg. I'm also a freelance editor. I'm founder of Bent Light Writing. It's an international editing house, and we put a focus on authenticity reading. And I do a bit of writing as well, and all those sorts of things. And yeah, like James said, so normally when we open an episode, we start by asking the others what they've read or watched and just sort of what forms of literature and media are in their lives at the moment. So we've decided today we're gonna have a bit of fun expanding that a bit more and just actually diving into what we're reading and actually like picking at it a little bit, like what we're liking about it, what's maybe not working for us or something like that, and just kind of like with any literature analysis, just kind of see what sort of nuggets we can pull from that. There are some things I like and I can't tell people why I like them. I just do. And it's a really interesting exercise to try to see why you like something. And definitely can help bring some things you might be doing in your unconscious mind or things you might be unconsciously enjoying into the conscious mind so you can actually utilize it as a tool, maybe in your own writing or even just appreciate it when you see it. So with that, I'll throw it over to you in traditional style. What are you reading, watching? What's on your radar right now?
Something I finished reading quite recently was the Book of Coley by M. Carey. M. Carey is also the author who wrote The Girl with All the Gifts, which is a book I absolutely loved. I thought it was really, really good. The Book of Coley is a first part of a series called the Rampart series, and it's set in a kind of small community of maybe 100, maybe 200 people, where you get the impression kind of early on that there's been some kind of collapse of society and that this is a kind of group of survivors who have developed this community over generations, and they've kind of regressed a little bit. They've gone backwards into kind of just a more simple way of life. They have big walls, big ramparts around their society, around their village, and it seems that the trees outside the village are alive and try to come and attack them and things like this.
Whoa.
So their main threat is it's all kinds of inanimate wood, basically. Any branch that is taken off can come to life and attack them. And seeds and all these things are a real threat. And I feel like it's got kind of a YA feel to it because it's got this great kind of coming of age arc to the character in that first book, where he kind of starts to notice things about his society aren't, the way he was raised to view things aren't necessarily the way things are, and there's a kind of a bit of injustice going on within the society. But what made the story immediately, and this is what I kind of wanted to chat about, what kind of reeled me in immediately was the character's voice. It's all written in the first perspective, and you feel like the character is telling you this story, and his dialect and his way of speaking just feels so real and authentic. And the words he uses, kind of all these different phrases for, the way they see things and the way they view things, really just feel really, really authentic and really well realized. And that was something that like sold me on the book immediately. And I wonder if it was written in it was written in the third person, for example, I just don't think it would have had the same impact. There's the fact that it's him telling his story and telling it from his kind of limited viewpoint, and his perspective on things. Like, he doesn't understand things about like the world that was lost and all that. Like, it just worked really, really well. So it's a really strong voice in that book that I'm yeah, touting and promoting and saying that this is really good. Yeah.
The So like the phrases and things that they're using, are they invented phrases for the specific world context, or is it actual like regional real world phrasing and wording that he's
It's a
using?
mix. It's a mix of kind of real word phrasing and then kind of, I suppose, invented phrasing for like this time and place. I'm trying to recall up a few if I can, but they have kind of I guess if you know what I mean, they would speak in like he speaks lower class, and there's people in the society that speak higher class.
Okay.
So he uses a lot of I think it's some kind of past tense phrase. He uses it wrong. Oh, that's what it is. He says he doesn't say I knew, he says I knowed.
Yeah.
But that's the way he speaks consistently throughout the whole story.
Yeah.
So it always gives you this, there's something really endearing about that. It seems really
Yeah.
everymanish, even though he's like a young boy. There's something kind of innocent and kind of like you just get a strong sense that this character doesn't understand necessarily the world he lives in. So when you encounter these kind of people who are the leaders in his community and they speak much better, you get a real sense of like the different hierarchies within the society and stuff. But he's got these, I don't know how to describe them, but there's all these little phrases that just feel very everymanish. So I just thought that was really strong.
I love that. Yeah.
The other thing about it is that even though it's like a science fiction story, because he starts off telling you what's going on, all of the stories that he's telling you are just very important events in his life, like very emotion based things, which I'm seeing more and more in science fiction, which I think is really, really good. It's really humanizing. So you get a sense of like the slow world building through all of these kind of childhood and teenage events, like his first kiss and his first some accident that they had when they were kids, when they were playing, kind of thing. But it's gradually building a sense of the world and the society around it, but through these tangible human moments, which really works well.
It's very do you happen to know if this was written before or after Hyperion? I imagine after.
It's a different author.
Different author, yes, but
yeah. I don't know if it was written after.
Yeah.
I wouldn't see a tremendous amount of crossover
Similarity
between the two.
Okay. Yeah.
It reminds me an awful lot of The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness.
Okay. I don't know.
Which was, I think they turned it into a film with Tom Holland, but I don't think it did very well.
Okay.
It may have been something that they were working on and didn't come out. But that is a story which is also set in a more primitive society after having been a more technologically advanced society. But I think in that's a story they had colonized another planet. But in The Knife of Never Letting Go, it's a story set in which everyone can hear each other's thoughts. The only people in the society are men. There's no women. And then the story kicks off when one of the young character who you're following, when he encounters a woman and he can't hear her thoughts, and that's kind of what sets off the chain of events. Whoa. But that's a really good book. It's got this great, it's written in the first person, again, super strong voice. But I recommend getting the book, because the book has, whenever there are, it's not sounds, it's whenever you hear other characters' thoughts, that appears on the page in like big, bold, black lettering, like it's jamming into your awareness of things. It's so good. So when he like walks through the town, you open the book to the next page, and it's just 2 full pages of all these phrases and lines and stuff. It's meant to just be this chaos of noise of other people's thoughts, and everyone's aware that everyone can hear everyone else's thoughts. The opening line of that book is the first thing you realize when your dog learns to speak is that dogs are really fucking boring, or something to that effect. It's really, really good. So they can hear all the animals' thoughts as well. So like you get a sense of like what a creature's consciousness is. I think there's crocodiles in it, and crocodiles are just thinking eat, eat, eat all the time and stuff like that. So very, very good book. I recommend that as well. The Knife of Never Letting Go.
Wow. Okay. Very okay. Yeah. The Yeah, it just reminded me of Hyperion a little bit, or my mind went back to that because that uses so many like very emotionally charged
Mm,
uh vignettes to kind of slowly build out the world as well. So I was like, oh,
yeah,
maybe. But
yeah.
yeah.
I'm noticing more and more of that lately. Emily Scott Mandel's Canadian author. She does it as well. She has this post-apocalyptic story called Station 11, which just
Mm,
focuses on this traveling band. But again, it's really focused on their emotions and it kind of fills out their experiences. So I'm seeing a lot more of that in science fiction lately, which I think is brilliant.
mm.
Because science fiction
And
kind of has a reputation for having quite bland two-dimensional characters that don't have any
true.
emotions.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
seeing like to see that change coming in.
That's I feel like well actually I don't really know this, but that just made me think of even fantasy used to be fairly like sci-fi was known for fairly bland two-dimensional characters, and fantasy as well back in the old day was very archetypal and like um so I feel like maybe literature as a whole is becoming more character
Yeah, yeah,
driven, or really like I feel like we do really put the books on a pedestal that managed to capture like a very human feel, like that sort of thing. Whereas before, I feel like there wasn't as much of a focus on that. At least as far as I've read, there's been
yeah.
older
I
literature is a bit more
I
uh,
think it's the influence of more.
idyllic.
Yeah, I think it's the influence of more women authors now because I think it was
Mm.
often women that were pioneering that. Definitely in science fiction, when you look back and you look at
Ah, funny
Anne
you should say
Rice
that.
and like Margaret Atwood, they were doing that for a few years. So I think
Yeah,
it's kind of the influence of having more voices, more women's voices, focusing
yeah,
more on that other side of a character, which
true.
is brilliant. Like I think it's really good. I think there's a little bit of a because I was reading some stuff lately and I was like, yes, this is kind of a bland kind of every man, not every man, but kind of a bland like male character in a story.
Hmm.
And I was seeing how when the character is a bit bland, it allows the world to come true
Mm.
a little bit more untainted,
Hmm.
because we always view things through the lens of our emotions. So you've got a character who just suits the story, and then you get to see the world untainted. But when you
True.
look at a character where their emotions are front and center and their experiences and their emotions change the way the world feels, that story just feels so much more cohesive. It just feels like this is a story, like the world and the character fit together so much better. It feels
Mm.
like it wouldn't be the same story if it was a different character who had different experiences and who's interpreting things different ways. So I
Hmm.
kind of prefer that in terms of science fiction. I kind of like it when the character's experience changes the world and the world changes the character.
Absolutely. I didn't thought of that. With female authors sort of pioneering more of a human
Yeah.
voice. But as I thought back to some of the more like I want to say 1800s literature or something that I've read, for example, even if you just compare Dracula to Frankenstein or something, so
Mm.
Bram Stoker and Mary Shelley, um, Frankenstein was like a whole just character deep dive on personal sorrow and grief, and Dracula was very just like patriotic almost. The characters were all very just Englishmen, sort of like
Yeah.
for the Queen, we will do this. Like,
Yeah.
but interesting. I'm gonna pay attention to that now from especially when I read older stuff,
Yeah.
see if I continue to recognize a pattern there.
Yeah, check out the Interview with a Vampire series by Anne Rice because that's
Ah,
like
true. You've mentioned that a few times.
it's so good, and it's one of those things where it's like we've seen vampires before, but this is a character who is just struggling with the experience of being a vampire and the idea of like immortality, and you have to survive by taking other people's blood. It's fucking brilliant, like it's so good, but it's so
That's the movie with Brad Pitt, isn't it?
yeah. I
It was
actually
turned
think I
into
love. I think the movie's really
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Like Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise are
yeah, yeah.
great in that, and they capture kind of a sense of melancholy and melodrama that is
Hmm.
present in the story. But yeah, no, the series is excellent because they only did one film. Or I think they
Yeah.
did. They might have done another. I think someone else did like another film, but it's not of the same vein. but that whole series is phenomenal. Like that is the, what would you call it? When I think of vampires, like that's what I think of. Like that's the best. That's the best vampire stuff out there.
Yeah. What do you, there is a, I don't know the word. There is a word for that where it's like your
Yeah,
pinnacle frame of reference for something
yes,
or something.
exactly. Yes, yeah.
Um, Brilliant.
There is a
Are
word.
there any has anything in what is it, the Coley, what's the book you're reading?
The Book of Cody.
The
It's
Book
the
of
Rampart
Coley.
series. The Book of Cody. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything that jumped out that you felt, anything that stuck out as like or were there any moments while you were reading where you felt yourself turning off, or parts that felt a bit boring, or parts that dragged a little bit, or anything like that? And have you given thought as to why that might be?
Yeah, there is a at a certain point he kind of finds technology and he begins communicating with the technology, and the
Hmm.
technology is like it's AI and it's chatting back with him, and I think it's very good and it kind of like it serves the story really well. I always find myself kind of tilting a little bit back when stuff like that happens in a story.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not that into characters going into video games or necessarily going into kind of long dialogues with anything that is kind of like a computer or an artificial kind of intelligence.
Mm,
And I don't know why. I think that's just an interest thing on my part. Um,
true.
and I never really see it as like that interesting a character. I always see it as like a one-sided conversation,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the
yeah.
character can't tell that they're in a one-sided conversation. And then I always wonder: is the author telling this story as it's important that the character doesn't realize that this is a one-sided conversation, or is the author going to be like the artificial intelligence is a character of themselves kind of thing, like they have they're alive too,
Mm,
because I just don't quite see it that way. So I always kind of feel a bit disjointed from where the story's going. I'm
hmm.
waiting for like the penny to drop for the other character, and it kind of doesn't happen. So I think that's just my attitude about artificial intelligence that pulls me out a little bit.
Hmm. True. So with artificial intelligence, would you say it's like because it's because they're usually portrayed there's no real character arc going on with them, or like that there's not going to be
I
much
wouldn't
drama
say that
that
because
passes with AI usually.
the AI in this actually has a great character arc.
Okay. Okay.
It's a great character, like it's really well done. Um, I just I know that the story is saying that like AI has sentience, and I never see it that way. I just feel like
Yeah, yeah.
it's my attitude about AI is that it's just something designed to mimic.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have a difficult time recognizing that something is just mimicking. We always kind of we do the same with animals. We put kind of emotions into animals that emotions don't necessarily feel, or
Yeah.
thought processes into animals, anthropomorphizing and stuff like that. And I just think we do the same with AI a lot. So that
Hmm.
kind of switches me off when that starts happening in the story.
Yeah.
But that isn't to say that that isn't well done in this story. I like
It's
when I got
just
to the end of that book, I was like, this is a pretty good character, and the arc is there and stuff. So it's all good. It's just not really my thing.
okay. Okay. I like that. Um, so
How
one
about yourself?
thing,
Oh
yeah,
yeah. I was going to turn it
so
over to you because you've been talking about my book for ages.
yeah, 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 no, I was about to take it as well.
Cool, cool.
So funny thing, I'm actually gonna start with a book that I've been reading over a very long period of time, just chipping away every now and then a little bit. Um, and that's, oh my gosh, what is it called? Oh, my laptop's on it right now, actually. Okay.
Lucky
Fire and
Gray.
Blood by George R. R. Martin. It's nice.
So I said it again. I was laughing.
I'm reading Fire and Blood by George R. R.
Oh,
Martin.
okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Um, and so fun little backstory. I was telling you before we got on the call or got started recording that I had trouble sleeping last night. So at one point I went to the other room and I picked up this book and I started reading. And it was the first time I picked it up in a long time. And I like this one's fascinating to me because I do think I'm like, why do I like this? Like it is pure, almost pure telling. Like
Why
it is
don't
a
you tell
history
me what
book.
Fire and Blood is exactly? Because I
Oh
think is
yes.
that what they've based the new series on? Is that one?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So Fire and Blood is apart from A Song of Ice and Fire. And it's basically it's just a history of the Targaryen family. Um, so long history as recorded by the Maesters, which are like the monks, history keepers of that world. And it's literally just like a long forum like a recollection of the Targaryen family tree and like the major historical events that happened in their line and how they ended up where they ended up today and all that stuff. But it's really like just straight up kind of historical history events like so and so of his name took this partner and took this kingdom and just recounting the events, the achievements of various Targaryens and dramas that split up in the family and stuff. But there aren't even it's a fascinating book because it doesn't set up tension and drama points in a very traditional sense. It doesn't do a lot of very direct, explicit foreshadowing and things like that. So as you're reading it, you really just feel like you're just reading beats as they're popping up. Like it's like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. But I love it. And I'm like, why do I like this? Like, what is it doing? Um, so I was thinking about it a bit, and well, one thing it does set a tension point in a sense because you know from the start that it's the degradation of a family. So you know it's not going to go well necessarily. So even from the start, you know, you kind of have that at least kind of pulling, like you know there's an inherent sense of tragedy. So um yeah, you get the feeling of, the start of the history is a pretty powerful start for the Targaryen family, and then from there it's kind of downhill a little bit. So you kind of get the feeling of like, oh, a big shoes to fill sort of situation from the start, which does add a bit of interest and intrigue as you're going through, because you're like, all right, when's the shoe gonna drop? What's gonna take them down? Because they have dragons and are all powerful. So what's gonna make them
Yeah.
fall?
What could go wrong there? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then it's kind of so another book I'm reading right now is The Three Body Problem by
Hmm.
I'm gonna look up his name. I want to say Suishin Liu. I probably butchered that name a lot. Oh no, by Liu Cixin. It's the other way around. Um, and yeah, apologies if I butchered that name. Chinese author. And there's one uh, mild, mild spoiler. I'll give it out of context, this point that is made. But at one point, the character is witnessing something. He's interacting with something, and he leaves the interaction feeling like a bit strange. Like it was almost like having a dream that was really sharp or like really vivid or like he just like I don't know one of those I interpret it as like how you have those moments where you watch a movie and it changes the flavor of your whole day, like you just leave that day or like the movie ends but it stays with you for the rest of the day until you kind of sleep and reset a little bit or maybe even for the rest of the week, whatever. It's like, man, that really just like it just leaves a residue on you. And this character was kind of struggling with this, and he was like, why did that feel uh, so intense? And he came to the conclusion that he believed that whoever created the thing that he was just interacting with was an expert at densely packing information. So but essentially showing rather than telling, like essentially like giving very little, what would appear as very little information, but the human mind, or like giving details that actually signify a lot. And what someone looking at it might not realize, but the human mind is unconsciously unpacking quite a lot of information. So he comes to the conclusion that yeah, whoever designed this thing managed to fit a lot of information in a lot of the details. And that's why it just left him feeling so impacted. And to take that back to Fire Song of nope, Fire and Blood, Fire and Blood. That's kind of what I think about it is like there's a lot of information kind of beyond the information in the way he's recounting the stories, the amount of detail. It's like the way he tells the stories says a lot about the world because he manages to capture his storytelling in a very historical voice and in a very sort of what I would call medieval voice in the sense that it does feel like you're reading something as recorded by some monk or some sort of um, it's a very like old way to tell a story is kind of how it feels. So even just how he's telling it kind of has this information behind it about the world as well as there's the events that he focuses on. It kind of, you have that information of like histories told by the victors sort of thing. So you kind of get that sort of element coming through implicitly. And
That's
just,
fascinating.
yeah, that's kind of what I pulled from it. It's like, I feel
Yeah.
like, because I do feel like I'm reading a history book, but I don't normally feel that interested by reading a history book straight cover to cover. So I was like, what's going on here that's making this so interesting? And I do feel he's packing quite a lot of information about the world just by having a very well developed voice, as well as the quantity of history he has to tell kind of implies to the reader like, hey, this is a very rich world. Like, here's a tome of its history. Like
Yeah.
told fluidly as well. I don't feel like I'm reading a Wikipedia page of just like facts. It's like here's an organized history of the Targaryen family. And the fact that there is an organized history of the Targaryen family speaks a lot about the world. So and about the author. So it's like that's kind of where I landed for now. I was like, I feel like he's packing a lot of information kind of behind the scenes that the reader unconsciously kind of picks up on, and it makes it interesting.
Yeah. I guess because I know that he's a big history fan himself. So I
Mm.
guess that what he's done is he's taken that experience because I guess he reads history and then he goes away and obviously thinks about it. I guess he's
Mm.
taken that experience and put it into a fictional story. That's what it
Yeah,
sounds like anyway. Yeah. It
yeah.
sounds like something that shouldn't work. So it's kind of
That's
fascinating that it does.
that's what every time I read it, I have that thought of like this should not work. This should not work.
Crazy.
And like I thought about like, is it just because it's really well known? Like, and it's I mean, obviously that affects the sales and everything. If this was his
Yeah.
first book, maybe he wouldn't have blown up. But like there's a little bit of that. But in terms of like, is it just my own personal recognizability? Like I'm recognizing some character names, I'm recognizing some places, and that has a little bit. And I would say yes, but I you can only get so far on that. Like that, I would say that's 5, maybe 10% of what's pulling me in, sort of.
Cool. Okay.
Um,
Is it something that would make you in any way interested in like doing that yourself or kind of taking something like that and
no,
doing your own? No.
no, I don't want to do this. As well as like, as well as it's like, I don't. I don't know if I could do it or like I mean my own novel world that I am developing does have a history. I couldn't do this. Like I couldn't write a book like this for it, but I mean I guess I could. And I suppose, as I'm saying this, it's like, George R. R. Martin didn't have this history so well developed before writing this book. He developed it for the book.
Yeah.
So, but it's no, I don't have a calling to do it. And I guess it feels a little bit, to me, it feels like unfair because I'm like, this shouldn't work. And it also feels self-serving because it's like, come on, you don't get to just straight up tell me information and hook me at the same time. Like,
Yeah.
you can't just do
Yeah.
that. That's not fair. That's what every author wants to do. And
That's it, exactly.
you're
Yeah. It's
doing
like you
it
gotta
and it's
earn
working. Yeah.
it. It's like you gotta put me in the scene, make it immersive, give me the emotion of the character. You can't just string through all the beats of the story and be like, am I amazing?
Yeah. but it's working, and
Yeah.
I'm like, damn it, why is it working? One other thing I will add, that I just thought about is, and it is like a difference between, George R. R. Martin telling a history and a history book, is that with history books, it's um, the objective is to look as objectively as possible. Like we're really trying to get to the grain of like what happened and really trying to get the truth of that. And as well as we can only sort of uh, speculate as to kind of what happened in certain areas, and we're looking through the dark a little bit, like we're trying to get clues and decide what happened. So like naturally when reading a history book, you're kind of your job is to be a little bit skeptical, and like just see what you can find and stuff like that. And then obviously there are pretty hard agreed upon facts, but whereas with George R. R. Martin, the readers, again, it's like information that's there without the reader maybe thinking about it. You're reading history as told by the God of that world. So that it's going somewhere you're supposed to go. Like, you're being guided with an intention and looking at the things you're supposed to look at, which makes it a bit inherently more interesting, I would say, because it's like you're looking at the character traits you're supposed to look at and you're supposed to focus on, even if he is giving you kind of like, yeah, history is told by the victors sort of thing and stuff like that. It's kind of like, well, you're supposed to be looking at history told by the victors right now, so don't worry about it. Like follow that and have fun with that. So there's just space to play, as well as it's fantasy other world, and there's that sense of removal, and so there is more of a sense of play and a bit of freedom in the space because of that. Yeah, that's the most I can pull off of that bone. I'm like just looking at that, I'm like, I think that might also be something. It's interesting to think about.
No, that's really good. I definitely think it gives like a strong sense of intrigue, and it's getting you to try to, like, you don't really get that. You don't get that in the same, like, I guess you can concentrate that thing in a book, because you get that as a sense from reading history, but I guess it's really concentrating it when you know it's in a book and it's kind of being pieced together that way. That you're like, I know there's a history here that I probably can't quite touch. That I'm trying to see what the real story is. So that sounds really good.
It is good. Again, interesting that it is good, but worth picking up if anyone's thinking about Fire and Blood. Also, I can say I'm reading it as someone who has not read Song of Ice and Fire. So this is my first George R. R. Martin book, my first exposure to his writing. And even with that, I can say like, oh yeah, impressive. He's doing something impressive. So doing something right.
I'd recommend, I think it's called A Night of the Seven Realms as his next one. It kind of follows a poor knight, like I think they're called field or hedge knights or something like that. I think he's just trying to make a living going around doing tournaments. But that's really good. That's really good. Like I was immediately pulled in by like the character, and just the setup. He's just like, I'm broken. I need to win this tournament.
What is that called?
I think it's called The Night of the Seven Realms. Night of the Seven Realms, I think, or Night of the Seven Kingdoms, I think. I have it here somewhere. Oh, this bookshelf. But yeah, that's very good. I think you'd be into that, and it's not as big and dense as his other stuff because it just kind of follows this one character.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. A spin-off.
Yeah. That's it. It's set in the same world, but it's just this one guy's journey around the countryside, basically.
Right.
The people he meets. Yeah, so very good.
So what else are you reading anything else at the moment?
Yeah, I was so torn over like what book to talk about. I just finished Chasm City by Alistair Reynolds. So Alistair Reynolds does a kind of big science fiction space opera-y type stuff. He has a book called Revenger, which is kind of like pirates in space, which is absolutely fantastic. and another one called Revelation Space, and both of those were very good. But when I read Chasm City, I was like, this is absolutely brilliant.
Badass name.
Yeah, it's cool. Like, and then Chasm City is this giant like hive city essentially that's gone to shit,
Okay.
where the story eventually goes to. Um, the story is kind of it's almost the opposite of like the Book of Coley, where it kind of really felt like a bland character and a very by the numbers plot, where we meet this kind of ex-soldier turned bodyguard for a crime family. He's like the bodyguard and advisor for this crime lord, and we meet him at the beginning of the story on a revenge mission because his employer and his family and all of the team have been taken out by an opposing crime family, and this guy is kind of just off by himself to get revenge, kind of just out of honor, and that journey takes him to Chasm City, and about halfway through the book, like it's enjoyable, it's very good, but about halfway through the book, I kind of started to wane in my interest because I was like, I get it, like he's super competent. He's going to go here. He's going to pursue the guy. He's either going to get him or not. It's got a lot of great science fiction stuff. It's got a real lovely blend of genres. Like it feels like a cyberpunk space opera. There's some cosmic horror in there, kind of crime noir. It's got a lot of different things.
Okay.
But I was kind of thinking around the midpoint. I was like, I get it. Like I know where this is going. And at the midpoint, this other thing starts to slip in. So you've got like the main plot, which is what he's trying to do, but the author managed to like sell this, like he managed to like stealth sleeper in this really, really good intrigue plot, where around halfway through I realized that I didn't care if he went off and got the guy or not. I was really, really interested in like what the background of the world was and what the background of the characters were, because he'd started to fill in all of this information from the very, very beginning that suddenly started to become really, really relevant and really engaging.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't want to give away like too much of what it was. But I went from thinking like, this is that kind of bland science fiction character that he just picked a character who suits the world really well. Like that, like I was talking about in the previous one, like it's just one of those. And then I started to be like, no, this is actually a fantastic character. Like this is one of my favorite science fiction characters ever. And the stuff that you're trying to figure out about the backstory of the world and then how it relates to what's happened now. When you're getting you kind of realize that there's storylines in the history, and you want to know how they ended because you want to know where these characters are now, like what happened to them, and that had suddenly become like the far more potent thing. So you're reading through like the chase scenes and the like external conflicts that the character is going through to try to get back to this like backstory and try to figure out like what's happened and where are we now. And the author wonderfully filled in just these little details, and he popped a little bit in there and he popped a little bit in there. It just gave you this really strong sense of like what was happening. So yeah, Chasm City, fantastic. I really liked it. Yeah, it's got a great, just such a wonderful blend of genre stuff. There's like paranoid crime thriller and cosmic horror and all sorts of stuff popped in there, and really seamlessly just woven into the narrative. So I highly, highly recommend that for like people who are big science fiction fans. It's a really good one. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Something similar happened in Three Body Problem for me, but it's not really relevant because it wasn't an intentional, maybe it's too soon to tell, but it didn't feel like an intentional author decision. Like it actually was something that I'm around maybe a little over halfway through the book right now. And I noticed that there are some elements that are starting to drag for me a little bit. And my interest has swapped from one element of the story to a different element of the story. So again, yeah, not really the same, not the same because yeah, it was not an intentional author decision, but
yeah. I found Three Body Problem my least favorite of that series. I found it dragged a little bit as well, but I would urge you to persevere because that series gets really good. I think the second book is very, very good. I think the third one is good as well. But yeah, there's a whole thing going on there in the first book where he's going in and out of something, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
every time he goes in, he learns a bit more. Like I hated that. Even though the more you learn, the more interesting it gets. Each time
Yeah.
he went back in, I was like, oh, I don't care.
Okay, this is the interesting thing. Okay,
Oh,
so all
cool.
right, so
Okay,
here
okay.
we're going to be talking about we're talking in code now to not spoil the book so
Yeah,
much.
this is
If
gonna
you read
be
it, if you know,
impossible
you
to listen
know.
to. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we'll do this. We'll do this fast. Okay.
Yeah.
So he goes into something. There's a series of him going into something and coming out of something. When for the first half of the book, I had the same reaction. I was like, oh, okay, he's going back into the thing. But the story's happening outside. Like, I want to know what's going on. That just switched for me. Like, now something's happening outside, and I'm like, just go back in. Like, nothing. This doesn't interest me anymore. Like, this is dragging now. Like, now I want to know. Like, stop. Excellent. He builds tension wonderfully. Like that was such a slow, just like first half of the book is this long stringing out of this tension. He reached a point where I'm like a little bit like, okay, now just I would like things to start sort of happening now. Like he introduced kind of another tension point, and I'm just like, no, no, I'm good. Like I
Yeah,
don't
I have
know.
enough.
I'll stay with you. I'm gonna keep reading, but I found myself that was a moment where I looked up from the book and kind of like checked the time, and it's like, I'll pick it up again later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do. I don't know whether to call it author intention or not, but he definitely has the, what would you call it? Your interest shifts from
mm,
one thing to another around the midpoint, definitely. But
hmm.
I don't know if you call it author intention because your interest probably shouldn't be waning in the other thing as well, but maybe
That's
it's,
the thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um,
But you know,
but
I had the
anyway,
same, yeah.
all that's I feel seen. Okay, cool.
What else are you reading at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm listening to the current what are those called? The unofficial book club book of Precipice fiction, Wolf Hall by
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
what is her Mantel, Hilary Mantel.
Hilary Mantel, yeah.
Um, so I'm listening to that one right now, and I won't go into this one too much. All I'll say is I'm curious to I think I'm going to read the next one because I'm really curious to see how this thing feels on the page directly as opposed to performed by an actor.
Yeah.
The actor's performance is excellent. Uh,
Who is the actor doing it?
Ben Miles, read by Ben Miles. Does that name mean anything to you?
No, I was wondering, but I had a
Okay.
feeling it was I had a feeling it was Dominic West.
Okay.
I listened to something on Audible read by him. I listened to
Okay.
Remains of the Day read by him, and he was fucking amazing.
Okay.
So I was wondering if
I,
it was him again. 'Cause
I was
it's not.
about to be like really impressed by like I was like, do you know a bunch of like voice actors, not only the authors but the readers? I was like,
No,
who you
I'm
got
not.
reading that one? Ben Miles. Ah, Ben. I love his work.
Yeah. Oh, Ben, yeah. That was in his, history era.
Yeah, yeah. He really went on a period
I'm not,
fiction
yeah,
kick,
I'm
Ben.
I'm not that across it.
But he does an excellent job. But what I find it a little bit disorienting, which is both impressive and I think just a fault of the audio medium for this book. Like I feel like it would be easier if I was reading it on the page. But like just the way the dialogue bumps back and forth, and there were a number of names introduced at the beginning that did just like I do find myself needing to go back a little bit to be like, who said that? Where are we right now? What happened? Which I don't think would be happening if I was reading it. But the same thing that's kind of disorienting is also the thing I want to praise about the book. Again, I think it's something about it's not so much the authorship, it's more so just like for an audio medium, the style is a little inherently hard to follow. But
It's quite dense, I'd imagine it's.
it's quite dense.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I'm still enjoying it. But the thing really wanted to commend was like it's probably the dialogue's wild. Like it's phenomenal. And obviously the amount of intrigue in the dialogue sure is great, like the things they're actually talking about. But the style of the dialogue is really impressive. It really stood out to me because I've never she manages to capture a lot of like mannerisms in speech and
Yeah.
rhythms of speech. And like I've never heard like she does this thing where or like a couple times with the cardinal. He's a cardinal, the or the yeah.
Cardinal, I think, yeah.
Yeah, she does a few things with him where he just like kind of mid speech just kind of cuts to another thing, and there's a number of like sort of intuitive leaps that they make in conversation, that which does happen in conversation where someone's laying down a line of logic and doesn't finish it and instead just leaps to the kind of thing that they were, or you can see, you can follow the line of thought without her writing it all the way out. And it feels so natural. And like, I was like, that is just straight up a fucking person talking. Like, that is
Yeah.
wild. I've never seen that before to that degree.
Yeah, it's definitely worth reading the next one because she, as a writer, you see that she breaks so many rules, but it all
Mm,
works on the page. Like, and it feels like it shouldn't, and that's an example of you would you would feel like you can't represent speech in that way, and you would
mm,
feel like you would have to make a big thing out of the fact that the character is now changing from what they've said to something else.
mm,
But no, she just fires away and does it, and it's all like you said. It's all very subtle, and it is all very like it's a book. You have to like you can't just sit back and read it. Like you have to kind of concentrate because she breaks so many rules, and then so many. I can't remember. I think it's that one of the books that like doesn't have quotation marks when people are speaking.
yeah.
I think it is, but I'm not sure if I remember if it is or not. But she like, feels like she breaks so many rules that would make it an easier read.
Wow.
It
Yeah.
still feels amazing. And then what's happening is often quite subtle. The characters are speaking in code and they're kind of speaking around subjects and stuff like that.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
That was definitely the thing. I'm fairly early into that one, but that was something that stood out very early to me of like I really felt like I was hearing dialogue in a new way. Like I was like, I've never heard dialogue like this before, and it's working, and it inspired me to explore how I'm representing dialogue, and like it makes me want to play around with how, as well as just because it doesn't feel like she does like, yes, it's an artistic choice, but she's capturing something real. So it's something where it's like, yes, I'm inspired to play around with my dialogue, but I'm also inspired to pay more attention to how people talk because like she's managed to capture something that felt real without me realizing, oh, that is something we do. Like I never thought to capture speech that way, but it's like, oh yeah, that's real. Um, which is a sign of a good author. It's like paying attention to things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah. Um, we'll just rapid fire. Are there anything like we won't go into them. Are there any other things you're reading just that you want to list off?
I bought a book of Franz Kafka's kind of essays and short stories,
Mm.
and I've been reading through them, and they're really good. But I reread Metamorphosis, which I hadn't read since like my early 20s,
Ah,
and I read it completely differently now, kind of
yeah.
that I'm a bit older. I remember reading it and assuming not that it was a critique on a story at all, but I remember reading it and assuming that all of the different characters' responses to the fact that the main characters were turned into an insect were just sort of stuff that the author had invented as like contrivances. Not
Mm.
contrivances as a critique, but contrivances just to make the story work. But I've read it now, being older and kind of having spent a bit of time in care, and I see how like these are kind of typical responses to someone feeling burdened by someone who is either suffering from illness or mental health issues. And I was just like, fucking hell, this is a
Wow.
like I didn't even appreciate it that much when I read it at the time. I just thought it was a weird story about a guy being an insect. But I read it now when I'm older, and I just really fucking hit, and I was like, this deserves all of the like fame and accolades that it has. Really,
Wow.
really brilliant. Yeah. How about yourself? What else are you reading?
Um, yeah, Wolf Hall, Three Body Problem. Those are my main two. Those are what I'm kind of more day to day actually working my way through. And then yeah, every now and then I'm picking up Fire and Blood, and then every now and then I'm also picking up a book by a Chilean author called Más allá de invierno, which is just
Mm.
Beyond Winter. And I'm gonna look up that author's name right now. She's a big Chilean author, by Isabel Allende. Um, yeah, really, really big Chilean author. That one, I'm making my way through that, but very slowly because it's a full-blown like literary work, and it is in my second language, so it's like I also read it just to practice my Spanish and grow my vocabulary and stuff. So I do move slowly through it, but I also it was a present from my wife uh, back when my Spanish was not as good. So it was like waiting for my Spanish level to actually raise to the level of the book. And now it's finally kind of there. So now I'm enjoying it more. But really, really cool meta lesson, not so much in terms of the literature, but just seeing like appreciating a language in the other book. It's a very different experience to read a book that was originally written in that language as opposed to a translation. Like the first book I read was a Harry Potter book. The first book I read in Spanish was a Harry Potter book, The Chamber of Secrets, and that's a translation into Spanish. And yeah, it works. Like the whole story's there, the book's there, but the way, and obviously it's a fully different genre, like YA, but the way an author plays with the language when it's them conveying the thoughts originally in that language, it's a very different feel. So, and I really wanted to kind of get that's what I was looking for. Is like now I feel like after reading Harry Potter, I was like now I feel like I wanna see what someone does with Spanish when they're fully like open to use their poetry and use their they're not just trying to convey an English idea in Spanish. It comes from that language.
Cool.
And yeah, just a couple days later, my wife went out and came back with that book. And she's like, "You should read this." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, thank you."
Nice.
Very impressive, and it's been a cool journey going through that. So that's what else I've got going on.
Brilliant. Okay.
Yeah. And now that we've covered what we're reading and stuff like that, now we can finally get into the body of the podcast. What we'll actually be talking about today. No,
Yeah.
I'm kidding. That was everything.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening, dear listeners. If you liked today's conversation, or if you liked any of the previous podcasts or whatever, do feel free to like and subscribe. No, well, we do have a YouTube, so you can subscribe. You can like and subscribe there. But give us a rating, leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you, what you think. You could send us a message at precipicefiction.com. Send us a question or maybe something you'd like to hear us talk about, or a question about anything, and we'll probably talk about it and shout you out because we like doing that. We do not just talk about writing and reading and stuff. We also write ourselves. So if you haven't already checked out the new Mythic, it's an anthology we put out a couple years ago now, actually. Very worth the read. I'm a very biased person to tell you that, but worth the read. If you do enjoy audio medium, it is available as an audiobook. And if you have already listened or read, we would not be mad if you left a comment on that as well. Unless it was a bad one. Leave a good review if you're going to leave a review. No, do whatever you want.
Message us privately if it's a bad review. We'll take
if
it
it's
into
a bad
consideration. Yeah.
So, yeah, if it's a bad review, send us a message, and
Yeah.
we'll talk it out. We'll hear.
You're listening to Pros and Cons, the Precipice Fiction podcast. You have been listening to Pros and Cons, a Precipice Fiction podcast.